My name's Tim Giuliani. I serve as President and CEO of the Orlando Economic Partnership. So before we get started, we were one of the groups that helped to organize, and want to thank you all for coming, attending, participating, and for coming here to hear this really interesting panel on the topic of startups, scaling in Orlando. And obviously when we say Orlando, we kind of mean Orlando and everything around it, because if I asked you to take a pop quiz on the city boundaries, you would all fail. So essentially we're all Orlando for this conversation, and we're going to hear from this panel on capital, on talent, on ideas. And so we're just going to see how much we can learn. I'm not going to be stupid enough to kill the time with the introductions, the full introductions for each one of these people, but let me just give you a sense of who we have. So in the middle, so there's two Jasons. First one's Jason Eichenholz. So I think a lot of you know Jason from Luminar. He's a CTO at Luminar. You may not know that he holds more than 40 patents on LiDAR, solid-state lasers. It's more than chasing a cat around in the living room, I'm sure. But obviously, it's not. But Jason's resume, I think interesting for here, he's UCF grad. Last year, he got the Schwartz Innovation Award. Part of his graduate work at UCF was funded by Bill Schwartz. So one of the things we're here to talk about is just the deep history in Orlando and some of these areas. Some of the areas that we're going to talk about are a little bit newer. They may have more challenges, but Jason's field's really been optics, photonics, lasers, and we know him most recently from Luminar. So Sunera Medhani, new member of the OEP board, we're proud to say. I will share the funny thing about, you probably know Sunera, she runs and was founder of Fat Merchant. We had a typo on her intro.
You're mean.
And we had that. She's scaled her business, so she's disrupting the payments industry. So when you now pay the OEP, you actually use Fat Merchant software. So she said, we haven't scaled to processing over 2 billion in payments. She said you just made a typo, it's 5 billion. So that's a really cool typo to make when it's 2.5 times what we thought it was. So welcome Sunera, and I think at this point Sunera's already won every award in Orlando and every pitch competition. And I'm sure if you go online you can find out every single one of those awards, all well deserved. So to my immediate left, Jason Rottenberg. You probably know him from Arsenal. So on the stage, I think him and Jonathan in particular, so over the last 20 years, maybe more, scaling, funding, building, selling, startups. Interesting thing, he's done a lot of the sales side and exits with some of the largest tech companies in the world, has spent time in Silicon Valley in Arthur Andersen's office, spent time in Washington, D.C., so I think the one additional thing we benefit from Jason's a little bit of outside perspective as well as comparing Orlando to where some of these other areas are. And he has an MBA from a place you might have heard of in Boston. Jonathan Taylor, another serial entrepreneur. He started 7 companies, running 5, selling 6, and acquiring and integrating 17 others. So started Voxeo in 1999, navigated them obviously through a very interesting economic time period, spun out Voxeo Labs, and then Aspect Software acquired Voxeo, but it was Chopo. So obviously has a lot of experience with a number of different companies. He's now mentor capitalist with Entronext Ventures, works with a handful of companies, and then took the role of CEO of SiteHound. Okay, so obviously this group, I'm going to ask the first couple questions, get them warmed up for all of you, and then we have a couple mics, and we certainly want to take some questions. So be thinking about what you might want to ask this group, because we don't get this group together very often. So number one, let's talk about talent. And the parts of the bio I wanted to highlight was just the different areas that you all are involved in, because we hear good stories, we hear bad stories. Recently, Orlando topped CBRE's top momentum list. So that's something obviously we want to tout as we're selling Orlando across the world, outpacing almost everybody, San Diego, Chicago, Austin, et cetera, for job growth rates, particularly in STEM, particularly in tech talent. I want to hear your experience, though, of hiring, of scaling. Sunir and I recently have talked about this, so why don't we start with you? Sure. How have you found that in Orlando?
So there's two sides to that answer. One, I would say to start with, and it's been incredible. I mean, so for Fat Merchant's story, we launched the company in 2014, and it was a founding team of 4 of us by the end of that year. And since then, I don't think there's been a single month that has gone by that we haven't added multiple new team members. We have just recently crossed our 100th employee mark a couple weeks ago. And last year, we ended the year with about 50 team members. So within, this year is over, but in 2018, we ended about with 50 team members and then doubled again this year. And we still have probably about 20 open recs and are probably going to be, scaling even further. So that's a lot of people to fill, and it's not just about you can find butts for those seats, but finding the right talent is critical. And we've luckily been able to grow and scale in Orlando. That was probably the biggest pushback, and some of the scaling challenges that I faced early on is how we're committed to Orlando, we want to stay in Orlando, but how are we going to continue to scale tech talent that we need in Orlando? So we have a lot of great industries that we can borrow talent from. We were talking about that yesterday, from tourism, hospitality. So we have great account managers, customer support, but finding developers is a challenge here. And finding upper level and senior level talent has also been a challenge, but we've been able to overcome it. And how we've been able to overcome it is through partnerships with the universities, partnerships with just programs like in Florida that will ensure that our job postings get to the right people, but also having a great culture will attract the right talent too. And so this it can be very challenging to scale any company and at the speed that you need with the talent that you need, and there is a talent war out there. I think every one of us can talk to the talent war, and it's tough because compensation is at its highest, right? Perks are at its greatest, and if you're not keeping up with unlimited time off and remote work and everything else, like talent is being poached, and you're seeing that in every single city. So it's not just for Orlando, but you can grow it. We're a living example of doing it, and it's by maintaining an awesome culture and having the right people to go find that talent. So,
thank you, Jason.
Yeah, so we get asked that question a lot, and so we've grown from me and a couple other people in Orlando to over 250 people here, and really a lot of that growth was. What is that?
It's the sound of progress.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's
So-
somebody conducting that train and driving the train.
There
on the
is,
track,
transforming transportation is hard when they're doing it back to you. So we've hired so many people and some really great talent, and we're really fortunate. So when you're creating a high-tech company and you're trying to raise capital here in Orlando, the number one thing investors are going to ask is, why Orlando? Why are you in Orlando? Why aren't you in Silicon Valley? Why aren't you in Boston or Austin or Detroit? And you better have a really good answer. And in our case, it's very simple. This is where the talent is. The optics and photonics technology infrastructure in Orlando is second to none, period. So between Lockheed Martin Missile and Fire Controls and all the spin-outs associated with that, Northrop Grumman Laser Systems, L3, ALST, Harris, Kennedy Space Center, and all that going around, we've been very fortunate to take that infrastructure plus the fresh graduates coming out of the University of Central Florida. Go Knights! No charge on. So that'll be disappointed this afternoon. So a lot of UCF graduates. We're the closest commercial building to the UCF campus. That's by design. And so we've assembled a team of over a millennia of man and women years of experience designing LiDAR technology. You can't do that in Silicon Valley, and you can't bring all the people who know how to do the testing, the manufacturing, the real world experience of shipping a product. If you can make it work in the desert in Afghanistan, you can make it work in Detroit. And you go through those experiences or make it work in space. So, but talent is hard to attract, especially at the senior levels. We've had to be very creative on some key senior talent and how to get them to come to Orlando versus an Austin or a Boston. We've got a great lunch program. We feed all of our employees throughout the day. They're never hungry. They call it the Luminar 15.
We've got the Fat 15.
Oh, there you go. See, you've got to do things like that, but we were really, really blessed to have that core infrastructure. And so, if you're an entrepreneur and you're in optics and photonics, you're in hospitality with the Rosen School, Disney, Universal, I don't know, the tourist mecca that we are. If you are in simulation and training, and it's beginning to become some of the fine tech stuff coming, this is a good place to be. But it's going to be an uphill battle with investors to explain why Orlando. And I hope we can be an example where you can do it right in Orlando.
Thanks, Jason. Jonathan, you want to share your experience on the talent question?
Yeah. So first off, I believe in hiring the best people wherever they are in the world. I don't really particularly care, right? If the best person is in Israel, then okay, great. Do you have a house? Does it have an internet connection? Great. Let's do it. I will absolutely try to convince them to come and live here. But that's often easier after they've worked with us for a while. So, trick them into working for you, let them stay in Israel, prove what a great company are. They're like, hey, this would work a lot better if you were in Orlando. And I've done that many times. I have moved people from all over the world to Orlando using that formula. So the first thing, again, I just believe literally, like, whatever you want, go on LinkedIn, find the best person in the world. The analogy I often use is it's like, I don't date anymore, I've been married for a while. Like, I'm not a tech bro, I'm a tech dad. It's a new brand I'm creating. We would have people all over the place that we would hire and bring in with this mechanism. I lost track of what I was saying, sorry. So I'll move on to the next thing. The other thing is UCF, obviously. We're very plugged into UCF for some of our businesses in very specific ways. So UCF not only has a great computer science program, they're particularly excellent in computer vision in their computer vision graduate program. One of my portfolio companies is doing just that, so we have a natural pipeline there, just bringing people from UCF straight in. Also, people from Valencia, that's been great too. Using a lot of internships has been key. And basically what we found at the end of the day after 20 years of doing this is tech talent we can get. Either they're here already or we can trick them and we can get them to move here. Sales talent is easy to get. We say, hey, there's no state income tax and there's a lot of golf courses. And then they're like, okay, yeah, I'll be there on Thursday. Just pack everything up, there you go. Support talent, we have a culture of people who are kids, young adults who had jobs at Disney, Universal, other places, grew up in a customer-centric, customer service environment. It's easy to scale them into tech support, customer support roles, et cetera. The biggest challenge for us has been great technology marketing talent. They tend not to be here already. It's harder to get them here because they don't care about golf courses and state income tax. The weather's hot and there's not as many plays and everything, but that's why Dr. Phillips Center. So it really depends on the category, but I think the key thing is just be flexible. Like, don't be like, I'm an Orlando company. Hire the best people wherever they are, trick them into coming in Orlando once you build a relationship.
Good, thank you. Jason?
So, do I need to use a mic? Everybody hear me? So, yes,
Yeah,
I have to use
they're recording it.
I got to juggle two things, which is more important. So to echo something that Jonathan said is the one area, I think tech talent actually has been easier to get, particularly in some of those areas where it's just naturally here, has been easier to get than we would have expected at our portfolio companies. I would say that marketing, particularly product marketing and product management people, are really hard to find here for some reason. So, by the way, if anybody has a pipeline to those people, please let me know. I know the Blue Wave guys are going, oh, we know all of them. Yeah, I know. So those are hard to find, and those have to do with having lots and lots of fast growth companies.
Okay.
And we just don't have the volume of those here quite yet.
Right.
But I think as an investor, in a different way than the founders here have talked about, there are two things we look at, which is what's the quality of the management team and their flexibility around adding talent and those types of things that need to happen. But to Sunira's comment, company culture really beats everything else. And so we've seen it over the almost 100 deals that we've invested in over the last 20 years. Great company culture trumps pretty much everything. It trumps market headwinds. It trumps what's happening in the financial markets. It trumps an okay product. It trumps all types of stuff. If you can build that great company culture, you will attract the right people. You'll retain the right people. You will have people who feel like they have ownership and a purpose. And when you have a community like Orlando, it really supports those types of things. So,
Thank you. So we're going to open the floor up in a couple minutes. So be thinking if you have any questions in this category of talent. I know some of our team in the room, and whether it's a company here expanding, like one of yours, or a company looking at the area, there's a lot of good things to tell them about the talent here. But it's also good for all of us to kind of keep our finger on the pulse of where are their challenges and where is their growth still needed, so that could be addressed. So I think fantastic job answering that question. I want to take a similar track. We could talk about, we could talk about people, we could talk about capital, we could talk about ideas. So let's move on from people into capital. And Sunira, since I started with you the first time, why don't we start with you this second time? You have a lot of success raising capital. I know you always have to sell Orlando to them. So I'd love to hear about how your company has grown largely here and received capital from other places.
I think the answer to all of the questions you're probably going to ask is build a great fucking business, right? So build a great business, you're going to attract the talent. Build a great business, you're going to get the investors. Build a great business, your business is going to scale and grow, and it's a lot easier said than done. And one of my favorite quotes is, "There's no such thing as a $1 billion idea, only a $1 billion execution." And it is so true. And I see so many companies that will say, hey, it's awesome. Fat Merchant has been able to raise $20 million in venture capital. We did raise capital initially from Orlando. Jason was one of my first investors for our seed round. And so there are venture funds here. There are angel groups here. There is capital here. I hear excuses sometimes from founders saying that it's really difficult and it is, and we don't have the amount of investors perhaps that Silicon Valley does or Boston does. But if you have a great product, you have a good industry, you have a good total addressable market, and you have a scalable business, you should be able to attract investors with that story. And so we've been fortunate enough to take the right amount of capital that we needed at the right time, use that capital to continue to prove out that story, and then go to the next round and go to the next round. And so our largest investors are from Atlanta, and that was strategic because we are a financial services company. And so the payments, the hub is in Atlanta, so Atlanta's transactionality, and it was very strategic for us to go find investors that could make the next level of connections for us. But raising capital is difficult. It is, a CEO's almost full-time job. Building relationships, it's just, it's part of the game, and you can't just show up. And I'm sure, Jason can probably tell you, they probably get 1 million, business plans and things via email. How many of those are you probably investing in? Zero. It's through relationships, and so, founders struggle with, being heads down and just in their product, and not being able to come out raising capital is important for your company, knowing when to do it at the right time, and it's still all sales, right? So build those relationships and get out there and talk about your product, talk about your success, and that will drive that capital need for you. So.
Thanks. Jonathan, what's your experience on the capital front?
So my experience has had multiple eras. at this point, it's relatively easy for me to raise money because the way I explain it is it's like everyone has two resumes.
Because you've made money for lots of people.
Yes,
That's why
right.
it's raised money.
Exactly. Everyone has two resumes in the startup world. There's like your normal resume where it's like, I worked at Acme and I was an engineer and did that. And then there's this other resume where it's like, yep, I took in 13 million and then I put out, 108 million. And I've been fortunate to build a great resume, having had two large exits here in Orlando. Now when I go to raise money, people are like, yeah, whatever. You did it before, it worked good. But the first time I went to raise money, seed funding in Orlando in 1995, I think it was literally impossible in 1995. And I will say that things have improved dramatically since 1995, but it's not easy to raise seed money here in Orlando. The reason I think that is, most seed funding actually comes from angel investors these days, not from venture capital firms. And so like historically in the community, I've heard a lot of talk about attracting more venture capital talent to the area. And I'm always like, no, they're like, come later. What we need is more angel investors. And I think there we've had two problems. One, most of our area's financial growth has not come from tech startups, and people tend to invest in what they know. So people made money in real estate. They go, the guy's got a new idea in real estate. I'll put some money over there. They made money in entertainment. They tend to put it in entertainment. So we don't have a strong history of tech startups. The second thing is that too many people who have had tech startups in Central Florida and got good exits and got good success moved away. We have to figure out as a community how to stop that, what the intervention program is, what do we have to do. And then the third thing is figure out how to attract more people around the country, around the world that have had great exits in the tech community to come live here, at least part of the year. We'll invite them out in December and convince them then. Don't invite them out, in like July and make sure they have another place they can go live in like July. But I think if we do it in December, we can get
You're all about tricking people.
yeah. I'm all about, yeah. I love tricks. I guess a magician would have been a good alternate career for me. Maybe I'll change it to magician capitalist instead of mentor capitalist. So yes, seed funding is hard here, right? Not impossible, though. Not impossible. What makes it possible is sales of all kinds. First off is actual revenue, right? That's the easiest one. Coincidentally, I have a startup that I invested in and became a founder of here in Orlando, had effectively $0 in revenue last year, and this morning at 9:48 a.m. we crossed $3 million in revenue in 10 months. That company is not going to have any problem raising money. Getting to that part is hard. So, like literal sales revenue is the biggest solution, but the second sales is your sales. Too many people starting a company just aren't comfortable doing sales themselves. And that's what you're doing at all moments. If you're starting a company, you're trying to raise money, you're selling a product. You're selling those shares. So, and not to seem like I'm completely crazy, I remember what it was I lost track of before, which I was talking about dating, right? Like in the dating world, I always thought that there were like two kinds of people, right? Like one would be like, I kind of, like her, and like maybe if we hang out, for like a couple weeks and, maybe we'll get comfortable with each other and then we'll, so I'll ask her out, right? And the other one is just like, whatever. It's like at a place like this, on Friday night, walks around and she's like, her. Walks up to her, socializes, asks her, gets a no, goes, okay, her. That's the kind of sales that you have to be comfortable with. You have to be comfortable with a lot of rejection. A lot of rejection. And a lot of people who start companies that, maybe they're in engineering background, but they have other backgrounds, they're not comfortable with that kind of rejection. So it's hard because they got 5 no's and that rejection, it hit them. But you got to get 50 no's. You got to get 100 no's. We spent a year at my first company trying to raise money in Orlando. Literally a year driving around, not just Orlando, all of Florida. And then we flew to Silicon Valley and 2 hours later we had our first funding. Again, it's much easier now. But you have to be comfortable putting yourself out there, getting rejected. You have to be comfortable selling because it's not just going to be at the start of the company. Every time you go to raise money. Eventually, maybe you're going to exit or you're going to do an IPO. Guess what that is? That's a sales job too. You have to be comfortable with sales of all sorts to make it work.
I'm glad you two are pointing out, sometimes when we do these types of panels and sessions, we make it sound like this is so unique to Orlando. this is not a unique to Orlando thing or a Southeast U.S. thing. This is how what it's like in the U.S. If you're not in Silicon Valley, Boston, New York right now.
I mean, I've been on dozens, sorry to cut you off, dozens of panels with this exact same question across the country, and they change. Right now I'm answering how to raise money in Orlando. I've been asked how to raise money when you're a woman, how to raise money when you're a minority. So everybody has their challenges, and I don't want to discount, any which one, but if you have a great business and you have sales, no one can say no to that. And so that's the tough part.
Follow the money. Jake,
Back
sorry.
to the Magic
Jonathan.
Act, just real quick. The other thing is, what you can do is make it so you don't need money.
That's the best.
That's the best way. And how do you do that? Well, you go find 2 or 3 co-founders and you trick them into working with you for nothing. What is that?
We're not having that lunch meeting next week.
Yeah, all right. Well, by nothing I mean cash. Plenty of equity, right? There's a lot of people at Voxeo who made a bunch of money, not just me. I only owned 22% of Voxeo. I started the company, right? Who owned the rest of it? Investors? No. Fortunately, because of some circumstances of the dot-com era, Voxeo only had 10% ownership by outside venture capital. So who owned the gap between 22% and 90%? All the other people in the company, right? So how do you trick them? What's the Magic Act? Hey, here's equity, But it can be done. And again, it sounds crazy, but it's absolutely doable. This company that I just talked about started off that way. They found a group of people. They're like, somehow we're going to do this without getting paid. We'll work a second job. We're just going to figure out how to get it done. And they got it done. So you can either work hard to get money, or you can work hard to get people, because almost all your cost initially, like 99%, is just paying people, right? So find people who will work without paying. Not Jason, but find other people. And how do you do that?
That's the difference between a software company and a hardware company.
Well, yes. Yeah. Hardware company, the vendors tend to want to get paid for things. That's a little harder. But software companies, this is absolutely a formula you can do. And again, how do you do it? You got to be that dating person I talked about. Just ask, literally, don't build a story in your head or why they'll say no. Just figure out the best person in the world who can help you and be like, hey, will you come do a start with me? And I don't have any money, but I'll give you lots of equity. And then when they say no, go to the second best person in the world. And the third and fourth and fifth and sixth. And eventually you'll get 3 or 4 people together. Trust me, it works. I've done this before. Eventually you'll get 3 or 4 people together and you can start a company. You don't really need a lot of money.
Thanks. Jason.
All right, so raising capital is really, really hard if you don't have an investment grade company. And so one of the biggest whinings that I hear locally are people who've got a great business. It's a 2 to 5 person business, and it may grow in 5 years to a 10-person business. It's a lifestyle business, or it's a small company. And I love those businesses, but he's not going to write you a check for that. And you need to understand that. And once you understand, there's a difference between a company where someone's going to give you money and expect a 10x return, to a company that's a lifestyle business that you can become a millionaire, but it's over 10 or 20 years. That's sort of step one, is figuring out if you're an investment grade company.
Are you investable?
Yeah, Are you investable? Is it an investable company if you thought things through enough that an investor who's going to give you money can get a good return? So at Luminar, we raised over $200 million. And there were times it was hard. We bootstrapped it early on. We squatted in a building that eventually got demolished. We had to raise capital from angel investors and convince them that self-driving cars would be a thing. That's how long we've been doing this. We had to do it in stealth. No website. It's not on anyone's LinkedIn profile. So wait, you have a company, but I can't find you online. Yeah, we're in stealth. Again, in Silicon Valley, they're like, oh, you're in stealth, okay. Here, what do you mean you're in stealth? What does that mean? You're making stealth fighters for Lockheed? No, you're building a company. So raising capital when you have a great team is really, really easy. We are fortunate that we had a lot of Silicon Valley pedigrees. We had an office in Silicon Valley on purpose. We had an office in Orlando on purpose. We say that we bring a little bit of Silicon Valley to Orlando, sort of the start company culture, getting things going, running fast, breaking shit, all that kind of things, breaking the norms. And on the flip side of that, we bring a lot of Orlando to Silicon Valley to enable something. So you need to be able to have the pedigree of the team to go do that and the talent, which is really hard to do here. Now, I'm really fortunate. I've got another company that I'm doing, which is Air Health, which is technology that I had abandoned a long time ago. I've got a rock star CEO, Stacy Ruth, sitting here. She's amazing, and she's a bulldog, and she gets stuff done, and she runs faster than I do. And it's like, oh, great. So we haven't had a problem raising capital from those angel investors and bringing that money in. And then we're going to be going to more institutional investors. We have some investors saying, hey, we don't want to invest with you now, we want to invest with you in Series A. We have investors who are saying, let's go. You know, we got the Rise to the Rest win, we got the Rollins Business Plan win. It's sort of the circuit you make in an early stage company. But without the team that we had, it's impossible to raise capital. And to your point, Jonathan, having experience raising capital, having experience working with investors, knowing what they're looking for, explaining things to them, telling them certain things, not tricking them, but well, he can do it. I can't. So to be able to have that experience, you can start a company here and raise capital. It may be harder, and in Air Health's case, we're doing it in an emerging area in the health space. That's harder to do when we're not in Boston or we're not in Raleigh or other places. But we're figuring out how to tap into those areas and to get those customers, that customer traction. And the OEP is doing some great stuff to kind of help that as well, to get that the first customer program and get these companies a start. Mm-hmm. The last thing that I want to talk about and just kind of mention is when it comes to talent, when it comes to fundraising, you know, we've brought in 250 high-tech jobs here. We've taken 0 state, local government incentives to grow those jobs here. We did it because we could raise capital. A lot of people use those as mechanisms to raise capital, and you don't have a sustainable business with that. And then people get disappointed, well, those jobs never materialized, or this didn't happen, or that didn't happen. You agree with me on that?
Yeah.
Right? That's how you've got to create the business case to go do so. Mm-hmm. But if there's any entrepreneurs in the room, you can raise capital here. And people like Jonathan, in fact, Scott used to sit in his space. And I used to go to Voxeo. I thought it was amazing that they had a barista, in the morning. I thought that was like the coolest thing. I never got a barista, but we got 3 chefs. So, All right.
Sorry, I just want to kind of my story is a lot different than these two guys because I'm a first-time entrepreneur. And so I do want to highlight the fact that I didn't have experience in raising capital. I didn't have a resume that had a bunch of exits. I was 26 years old with $10,000 in my bank account and had nowhere to go. And so I think that if you have a really great idea and you want to take it to market, I'm going to go back to the fact that you have to go prove out that business, prove out that you can build a team, prove out that you can get sales and get that scalable model, and immerse yourself, in programs like Synapse and Starter Studio, and go hang out where all the technologists are hanging out, so that you can learn from other people's mistakes, hear other founders, make those connections, because that's what I did and that's what worked for me, because I didn't have that resume and I couldn't even afford, so we still don't have chefs and we don't have a barista. We bootstrapped our culture even. So even to those founders out there, and culture is important, but culture is not going to come by buying the kegerator, right, or buying that ping pong table. Culture is the innate core of what your company actually is, and that comes from you as a founder and making sure that your team is happy and valued, and you have the right core values. As a company, for us, it's one team is our core value. Get shit done is our second core value, and lastly, is create joy. Now, we don't need to have, and I'm not discounting the fact that there's awesome things that can enhance cultures, but for those founders out here that are starting from absolutely nothing, that's been my story of how to do it, and I've bootstrapped it every step of that way. And when Jonathan, you're talking about tricking people, it's funny, we laugh about it, but I didn't get paid for the first 3 years of our company, although I did raise venture capital, because every dollar that I didn't take, I could invest it in sales and marketing and get our platform there faster. And so it takes sacrifice, it takes grit. So you've got to have the checkbox on every single list, from company, team, hard work, ethic, culture. And so when you have this perfect conundrum, that is when the success will happen. So I just want to highlight that I didn't have that resume, but.
Jason, on the capital front.
So I first answered this question 19 years ago, about 2 blocks from here. I had just moved here from Boston, and before that I lived in Silicon Valley. And I will actually, number one, climate here for raising money is 10 times better, 100 times better. But I will say the same thing that I said then. I've funded companies in Indianapolis, in Denver, here, South Florida, Texas, Maryland, tons in California. The biggest difference is that right now in the Valley, A deals are getting funded, B plus deals are getting funded, B deals are getting funded, maybe even a C plus deal every now and then gets funded. Here, the A deals get funded, and the B plus deals get funded, in my opinion. We just have fewer of those deals than other places because we are smaller. We have plenty of talent here. There's plenty of things to put money behind. It is definitely harder. I manage a fund. I go raise money for that fund. I get no's all the time. Some of them are really harsh, and I remember them, but most of the time I don't remember them. The people I remember are the people that write checks for me. That's who I remember. We see 2,500 deals come through our pipeline every year. 2,500 deals. We fund about 5 deals a year, new deals a year. We have never funded a deal that randomly came to me. In our entire history of our firm, never. We have never funded a deal that came to us from a broker. So some person that said, I'm raising money for XYZ company, they're a great guy. Never. Never in the history of our firm have we ever done that. This is about building relationships. It is a lot like dating. It's probably changed in the way it used to be. Like dating has changed. You used to have to randomly go up to somebody that you didn't know anything about and go talk to them. Or you had to be, someone knew somebody. Now you can actually research these things before you reach out to me. So you can figure out if I just funded a deal like yours. Because if I did, I'm not funding your company, right? I mean, we're not going to have 2 of the exact same types of deals. You can figure out where we are in our fund life. You can figure out what we look for in our presentations. We can figure out what we care about. You can find 10 people in town that we've already funded, like Sanira, and you can go ask them a question like, is Jason going to ask you about your customer acquisition cost? Which I'd love to ask that question. You could find all this stuff out about us before you even try to go ask us out on a date. And so the real difference that I find here is that there are people that are sophisticated and experienced raising capital. It's easy for you guys, Sanira. It'll be easy for you next time. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry, the price will be much higher this time.
I hope so, because that will mean that we've done really well on this round. So it's perfect. I'm counting on you. I'm counting on you. My kids are. Anyhow, the real thing here is that what people need to do here, which they do much better in some of these larger ecosystems, is they reach out to other people who have already raised capital and have those people help them. And I'm not going to discount any of the service providers out there, but don't go talk to your lawyer about how to raise money, because lawyers haven't raised money. Don't go talk to your banker about how to go raise money, because they haven't personally raised money for their companies. Go talk to an entrepreneur who has raised money, and they will tell you about the horrible things venture investors do and the very nice things venture investors do. But the one recommendation I would have is it's not about how much capital is here. If you have an unbelievable company and we invest in it, we'll make sure you get that next round of capital. I will call all my buddies in, up north and in the valley, and they will fly out here, sometimes to play golf. I might trick them with a golf game, but they'll fly out here to learn about the company. And if it's a high quality company, they will fund it. The issue is really get ready for funding.
So you bring up a great point. It is really, really hard to get investors to come to Orlando to see your company. Really, really hard. Yeah, they may want to golf. Maybe their family's going to Disney World or going to Universal. This is what I call leveraging the magic of the region, right? There are things you can do to make your life easier. They're coming here for conferences. There's a lot of stuff going on. But even today, with all the success, we have a hard time getting investors or customers to fly to Orlando. Know that. That's why we have an office in Silicon Valley. That's why we can do the same demos there, but we can't take them through our factory like you can in Orlando. You can't meet the engineering team. But we had an investor come through, and there was a Morgan Stanley conference here this week. Okay, so as part of that, he tacked on an afternoon and came through to see how's the money going, how's this working. So just know that. It's hard.
Yeah, so we've had an office in Palo Alto for 17 years, right? I'm there all the time. The other thing is, most of us know people who run firms out there. So if there's a firm that is a good fit, and you do your research, and you find out that Crosslink Capital is the ideal firm for this because they've exited 3 deals in this space, and you want connection to them, figure out who's connected. Because one of us, in the case of Crosslink, can make sure you get a meeting with them if it's worth it.
Jonathan, you remember where we first met, face to face?
No.
It was that memorable.
I have an awful memory.
Portola Valley?
Oh, that's right.
At Bucks?
Totally random.
No,
Yeah.
completely random. We had an office up on a hill in a mansion in a state compound. It was almost a cult, I don't know.
It was classic Silicon Valley.
Right, it was like out of the books, Silicon Valley. And I'm sitting there, and I think it's Jonathan Taylor. And he was there for an event at this tank farm place where we were in stealth for a number of years. So we first met face to face in Silicon Valley.
Yeah, so the company I mentioned that just crossed 3 million in revenue this morning, that is literally the first startup I've done that has had measured success where I did not also have a presence in Silicon Valley, right? Every company I've done also had a presence in Silicon Valley. You can call it another trick. Again, I don't view trick as a bad word. It's more like tips and tricks, magician act.
We're going to change the name next time.
like-
Secrets, it's going to be
Yeah.
tricks.
Yeah, tips and tricks. It's those kind of tricks, not the like fool people, smoke a cigar afterward kind of trick. Not that one. It's just like, how do you build trust? Well, sometimes you have to take steps towards building trust. Like all the stuff that really everyone is saying up here is trust. People have more trust with me because of past exits. People trust Anera because of the work that she put in the circuit, right? She built trust. We all built trust. If you build the trust, you build a relationship, then you can get the sales. But absolutely, Silicon Valley, having a presence in Silicon Valley, I have literally had, not just that, I have had companies from Orlando end up pitching me while I was in Silicon Valley, not realizing they were from Orlando, because we're both doing the same trick. They're pretending they're in Silicon Valley, and I'm pretending I'm in Silicon Valley.
All right, so can we maybe get one?
I'm sorry. My story's just so different here. I don't have a presence in Silicon Valley. The only time I go to San Francisco is when I want to go to the Vineyard. So truly, I do want to point out that you don't have to have that. It's very, I love that it works for you guys, but I really am proud of the fact that, and I know you guys are too, for the Orlando story. And there's some really great pockets that are not just Silicon Valley too. So for us, it made sense in the Southeast for Atlanta. Boston could be it for, for healthcare, New York. So wherever that may be, it doesn't have to be Silicon Valley, but I see where you're going there. I just wanted to point that out. That it does not just have to be Silicon Valley. So find your industry, and that may work to meet those right investors, but we did not have to do that.
I think you're right. I think Air Health is probably going to be Boston, not Silicon Valley. but it's about access to customers.
Sure.
That's, for me, that's the key. It's about access to customers, because if you have customers and you have market traction, you don't have to worry about capital, right? It's getting traction in the market. And oh, by the way, if you're in a simulation and training market, no better place in the world to be than Orlando, Florida. Nowhere else, because your customers are already here.
Well, I love that you guys represent a number of different ways of success, different types of businesses, some serial, some not, some Valley related, some not. All have, at the end of the day, Orlando in common, which is why we're all here. Sorry we didn't get to the questions. I would have done it if we would have, needed to keep this group on track, but somehow they managed. And I think able to. You're good.
I said two questions. No.
So
So we got through.
I'm sure they'll be hanging around, but we're gonna draw this panel to a conclusion. Please help me to thank some of our best success stories in Orlando.